I have come up with the Flying Man thought experiment, and the purpose is not to make anyone look silly or push back, but just see. I bet you and I, Gary, are very similar in what we accept or don't accept if we hear claims. So here's how it goes: we're walking in the forest, and we stumble upon a partially buried book. We go, "What's this?" You and I open it up, and we just open it up at a random page, and on the random page it says that a guy named Myron flew unaided across the Grand Canyon, just flew unaided across the Grand Canyon. Now, I don't need a long explanation of why. I'm just asking, would you believe that happened in history if that's all you read at that point?
I would tend not to believe it, and whether I believe in whatever my belief. No, I wouldn't believe it from just picking up the book. But okay. I would require
no buts. So let's just go one at a time here, okay?
What do you want me to answer? You keep cutting me off every time I say two words, and you go on for a minute.
My question is, would you believe?
No, I'm going to keep talking because that's what you do. You ask me a question, I start to answer, you cut me off and go into another question. I would like to be able to answer your stinking question. If you don't want to ask me a question, don't ask it.
All right,
but if
guys,
you do, wait for the answer.
All right, Dr. Look, Pankrik, this shouldn't be like turning into a debate. This should be more like a question discussion.
Well, he answered the question. I asked him, would you believe it? He said no. And so I wanted to move on to the next question.
And I said, and I'm in the middle of saying something that you probably would agree with, I would require a lot of evidence for it. But no, you cut me off and go, wow, what about a different kind of flying guy going across a lake this time? I don't care what you're saying.
No.
First of all, that's not my argument. You're making things up that are not my minimal fact arguments.
Gary, the point of this thing is to see the principle of analogy that we're the same. Because I agree with you. I wouldn't believe it either. But now let me add, I'm going to add piece by piece, full disclosure, piece by piece, the evidence for the resurrection.
Yes.
I'm going to apply to the Flying Man. So let's say we flip the page and it says that Myron flew in front of 500. He flew in front of his 12 friends and finally to the author of this book, this letter. Yeah. Would you believe it now?
Not when I don't know who Myron is. I don't have a clue what his background is. I don't know anything about him. Now, if you switch to Jesus Christ, and critics, I have to keep saying this, and you don't like me saying it, but the vast majority of critics believe that Jesus was a miracle worker. The vast majority of critics believed he exorcised, whatever that means. He believed he was exorcising demons, so do the people. They believed it. If I know these things about Jesus, he lived probably the most famous ethical life in the history of the world. He had great teachings. He is praised in every major religion in the world. Now you go, now what if he appeared? That is your example of whatever the guy's name is, Myron, whatever. I'm not quite hearing you, but there's no analogy between Myron and Jesus because you have no background. You want me to believe a guy who hasn't been around, has never healed anybody, never exercises, never lives in.
Okay, good point. Good point. So now we flip
it in the.
So we flip the page.
Life of Jesus.
So we flip the page, and it says that Myron was known as a miracle worker far and wide. He walked on water as well as fly. He multiplied loaves and fishes. Would you believe it now?
No, because I have to know a whole lot about his life. What kind of an ethical life does he live? Is he into magic? Are any of these doing? I would ask the same questions you do about naturalistic theories.
Okay.
And I would welcome you to make up a naturalistic theory about the resurrection since you like Myron so much. If
That's a good question.
Make a naturalistic theory about Myron, make a naturalistic theory about Jesus. Go for it. Tell me what happened with the resurrection.
If Myron did lead, if you became convinced Myron did lead a very ethical life, are you saying that you would be more likely to believe he flew across the Grand Canyon?
If you showed me a bunch of evidences, a bunch of other areas now, and I start applying naturalistic theories, and I don't think it's magic, I don't think it's trick photography. If I'm watching this on a film, I don't think it's photoshopped. If I can do a check, things would start coming together better. But I'm still a mile away from believing he flew across the Grand Canyon.
So Trent, just I'm going to ask a favor ahead of time, and please answer the question I ask and not anything else. Okay. So when I ask you something like, do you believe? I'm not asking why you believe. I'm just asking, do you believe?
Well, I'll answer the question, but sometimes people ask leading questions that can't be answered, like when did you
That's
stop
okay.
living life?
I'm asking you to walk into a trap that I'm going to set for you, because you have the truth on your side and you got nothing to worry about.
Okay.
Okay. But I'm probably not going to be as bad as you think I'm going to be. But anyhow,
That's what my dentist says too.
yeah, I think you and I are the same. And here's an example. If you and I were walking along the street and we see someone on the ground, seized up, convulsing, froth coming out of their mouth, and we overhear some people talk, and one guy says, "Oh man, that person's demon possessed." Another person says, "That person is having an epileptic seizure." My bet is you and I would both go with the epileptic seizure. Am I right or wrong?
I would go with things are as they appear unless evidence suggests otherwise. And I would say that this appears to be an epileptic seizure. The evidence can be accounted for with that, though there could be other cases where that would not account for it, like if the person had supernatural strength or spoken a language they didn't previously know.
But right now, all we're seeing is someone lying on the ground, and so you and I are the same. We would go with an epileptic seizure, which I think, if we had to put a label on it, it's naturalistic. So you gave a naturalistic explanation right there for something that others might say is a supernatural explanation. And I think that the fact that you and I agree on that can be applied to every individual claim found within the New Testament. I asked some questions in my intro about the Gospel of John, and I'm just curious. I asked like the audience listening, but I'm curious to know your answers. If we removed the Gospel of John and we had everything else in the New Testament, would you still believe that Jesus Christ rose bodily?
You're telling me if we did not have John's gospel?
Yeah. Let's say
But we had everything else.
We had everything else. Would you still believe that Jesus rose from the dead?
Yeah, I would say so.
How about if we took away Luke?
I think you're telling Luke Acts or just Luke?
Just Luke.
My confidence might start to be diminished a little bit because I think Luke preserves embodied resurrection appearances. But I still think there's strong evidence for early resurrection belief in Paul's writings, in his preservation of the Creed in 1 Corinthians 15.
Okay, very good. Now let's do the opposite. Let's say we remove all the Gospels, we just have Paul's letters. Would you believe Jesus Christ rose from the dead bodily?
I don't know. I might, but without the Gospels, I would have a difficult time understanding the nature of Jesus's ministry. So I might not believe, but I would say that it's irrelevant because we do have that evidence.
Well, I know, but this is a hypothetical, and hypotheticals are great things to learn about ourselves and why we believe things. Can you see that chart?
Yes, NBNB.
Yeah. Okay. So you got 20/20 vision. That stands for not believing, believing, and in the middle is neutral. You see the colors? We've got red, yellow, light green, and dark green. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. So many Christians struggle with this, and Habermas totally struggled with this when I asked him this question. But I have faith in you that you will do much, much better. And this is a thought experiment to see, not to make an argument, but to see that we are the same. And if we are different, where are we different? So it's really hard with Jesus' body's resurrection to know where exactly to start. Like you can go to the Old Testament and the context and everything, but let's start with what we actually have in the New Testament. And that's Paul's letters. If I talk about my ancestor who could fly and say that he just ran across the or he ran towards the edge and he started flying unaided, what color are you on this chart? Do you not believe?
Of you saying you had an ancestor who flew across the Grand Canyon?
Yeah.
I would not believe that.
Okay. And what if I said it happened 2,000 years ago? Would you believe it now?
And the only evidence is still your claim about what happened 2,000 years ago.
So as I go on, the only evidence is what I'm presenting.
Sure.
And we're adding on.
Yeah, I would say there is insufficient evidence for it's not supernatural, non-natural explanation. There's enough background evidence that you're telling a joke or things like that. No.
Okay. So 2,000 years ago doesn't make a difference. The fact that we have the claim doesn't make a difference. What if I told you that he flew in front of 512 of his friends and finally to an author of the letter who's writing this creed? Would you believe it now?
Writing a creed. Okay, so you're making this claim and saying there were these witnesses 2,000 years ago?
So we're holding a piece of paper that said my ancestor flew in front of 500 and flew in front of 12 of his friends and finally to the author of the person writing this down.
Okay, and all I know is that you're here holding a paper that says that?
Yep.
Okay. No, because I have insufficient evidence that the testimony goes
I'm not
back
asking
2,000
because I'm just say no and you're fine.
Sure,
So
no.
so you're still in the red, right? Guess
Yeah.
what? I am too. I wouldn't believe it. You and I are the same.
Mhm.
Okay, let's say now that it's in the context of a bunch of pagans who believe in many different gods, and there is even prophecies that this man would fly, written. It's on paper, written hundreds of years prior. Do you believe it now that my ancestor actually flew across the Grand Canyon?
No.
Okay.
Well, I guess, yeah, you don't want me to explain, which is fine, I suppose.
Well, no, I'm showing we're agreed. You and I both.
Yeah, I wouldn't agree, and the evidence for what you've presented still doesn't reach the level of the evidence for the resurrection. So that's still consistent on my part.
Okay, and let's say there were two people who were antagonistic to the man flying. They never liked the guy, and they came to believe that my ancestor flew. Do you believe my ancestor actually flew now?
Well, I would be more open to it, but I still think we don't have evidence that any of these people believed any of that, because I just have you here with sheets of paper and nobody else vouching for it.
No, we actually have text. Let's pretend in this thought experiment, I could present you documents that say these things. Do you believe it now? All the things I've mentioned.
It's possible. I might also be open to maybe they saw something and misinterpreted what they saw. Maybe he had an ancient.
My question is, do you believe it? Are you moving into the yellow stage, or are you still in red here?
I still don't believe he violated the laws of nature because the story does not include a causal power capable of doing that.
Okay. So let's say this person, let's say my flying ancestor, there was diaries written about him by 4 of his friends. And the first diary says something like that he claimed to be God. And he even predicted that he would fly across the Grand Canyon beforehand. Do you believe it now?
No, this still seems like a freak occurrence. If this is supposed to be, is this saying that a miracle was done to get him to fly across the Grand Canyon?
Yeah, a miracle was done. He was God, and it was to show that that he is God.
Okay, if you had someone who could vouch for the divine power they have with sufficient evidence involved,
Okay, well,
then I might believe. But that
okay, yeah,
person
we do
doesn't
have that. Okay, so you're still not believing.
Well, Doug, I'll just cut you the chase. If your flying man had the same evidence as Christianity,
No, I don't want to do that.
But it doesn't.
Trent, I don't want to do that because I already know your answer is if the flying man had the exact same evidence as we have for Christianity, you would believe in the flying man. I get that. But my point is with this thought experiment, to see where do we diverge. And so far, you and I are the same. And I'm very curious to know when your belief switch turns on. So are you still in the red?
That he flew,
yeah,
that we have different people that are involved, but I'm trying to understand, you haven't included everything with it. It might be easier if you just started with all the Christian evidence and take away something from it, because I don't know.
We could have done that, but we already started this. I think we're almost done. So let's say now we have a second diary that outlines the miracles that my ancestor did before he flew.
Okay, fine. Then I would say, if these are genuine miracle claims, is it in continuity with established miracle claims? I already have good evidence for Christianity, its resurrections claims. There are claims of Catholic saints that have flown, like St. Joseph Cupertino. I'm open to that. Not entirely convinced, but open to it. So if it's in continuity.
I understand, but let's say my ancestor flew before Christianity. So you can't compare to Christianity.
Was he Jewish? Are you Jewish, Doug?
So would you believe, so you have nothing to compare it against. Would you believe that we have a second diary, and the first diary mentions that he claims to be God. He claims to do these miracles. He actually walked on water and flew. He multiplied loaves and fishes. He turned water into wine. And it says this, these diaries are written decades later. they're not signed and dated, of course.
Here's my question. I need a clarification. Are there people who were willing to be persecuted, martyred, and an enduring belief system
Yes.
that's continued to the present day?
Yes, you're cutting right to the end here.
Okay,
Yeah,
then I'm
yeah.
I would say I'm very, very interested.
Well, wait a
It's
minute,
just
wait a minute.
hypothetical. I still don't have to worry about it.
Wait a minute. With the Flying Man, what we have here is about, I don't know, 100 years later, there's reports, at least decades later, there's reports of people dying for their belief in the Flying Man. But we don't have reports that they actually could have recanted and they would still have lived. And some theologians, like Cheryl McDowell, says that we really can only be confident about 2 of them. Do you believe now?
I think I'll let us go to audience Q&A, but no, it's still not the same.
That was fun. I really do thank you for participating. You did much better than Habermas.